Welcome to Book Sense. I am Gail Huxley. That back there is Berwin, and thank you for clicking on a video by a tiny channel. Your time is really appreciated here. In our video called Tana Mojo and the Youth of Dorian Gray, I referenced Tom Wolfe and his new journalism style of telling the stories of counterculture youth whose stories may not have been taken seriously at the time, but it's wonderful that we have them of both the famous and forgotten. I said that this is why internet culture matters, simply because these people exist, because they influence millions, no matter how fleeting their influence is. I wanted to expand on that topic, so let's do it. Dr. Rick Chambers, the co-host of Book Sense, mentioned to me a few weeks ago that the line between high and low culture began eroding about 20 or 30 years ago and continues to do so. In fact, he said that high culture was almost meaningless after the 1960s, so we can trace it back past 20 or 30 years. The burgeoning of pop culture, of youth culture, began to blur these lines, and music was part of this obfuscation. This transition marks a shift away from the modern and into postmodernism, even if aspects of modernism are still alive and well today. An element of postmodernism is obscuring boundaries. Traditionally, education contributed to asserting what's high and low culture. Academia used to be the arbiters of high and low culture, and for some, it still is, even if they don't recognize the roots of their tastes and distinctions. This boundary between high and low assumes there's no value in the low. So, with these cultural changes that continue to evolve, many, maybe most, feel comfortable and free admitting their obsession with the Real Housewives of whichever city. But for some, the need to assert the line and insignificance of low culture is stronger than ever. I was one of these people. I didn't start watching YouTube or taking an interest in internet culture until a few years ago. It was Kat Black who caught my attention, but it wasn't just discovering quality content that marked the beginning of my descent into this endless void of good, bad, and ugly content. It was learning to just enjoy things without questioning the quality or if it be considered a guilty pleasure. And those of you who love drama channels and reality television may have never had to jump over this hurdle and question the importance of it. While I was introduced to so much valuable literature in college, I also became a literary snob, and that snobbery extended into film, music, and beyond. Now I'm trying to meet myself in the middle. That discerning person I was, who cared how I passed my time, and who I sometimes find myself to be once I realize hours have passed, and I've been watching commentary about Onision all the way to Kentaro the baby gorilla at Kyoto City Zoo. Taking the time to watch very good and very bad YouTube changed my perspective. And I'll note here that Dr. Rick said something once that helped me. When I thought I was at my laziest, and sometimes I was, he made me realize that anything can be working. Dr. Rick said that when you're entranced by YouTube, you're not filtering. It's afterwards that you filter the worth and make use of it. And you can have filters that are too stringent. Academia was the filter for us and in general. Today it's attention and AI. All of that time I felt was lost is the only reason I was able to write this essay and see how new journalism is relevant today and applicable to internet culture. But although I only half regret time spent on YouTube, I try to balance it out with what feels satisfying and meaningful to me. It's like intuitive eating. Sometimes your body wants pizza and other times it wants veggies, but you might keep eating pizza until you're miserable. Sometimes that's just a process you have to go through so you can get past it. So although my education made me pretentious, it also introduced me to a type of storytelling that made me see the worth in all stories and events, and the importance of how those stories are told. And that's new journalism, which I just mentioned. So what is new journalism? It's a genre of journalism developed in the 1960s and 1970s that uses the techniques of literary fiction so that the story reads more like a novel. And while traditional journalism just reports straight facts, new journalism allows room for subjective experience, understanding that truth and facts don't always align. The writer Tom Wolfe coined the term specifically in the 1973 anthology The New Journalism, which would be a great introduction to the genre if you're interested. Tom Wolfe, of course, is the first author that comes to mind when I think of new journalism. He died in 2018 and continued to work well into the last decade of his life, though I don't think he wrote much about youth and the age of the internet. But I'd like to think that he'd be in the hype house with his notepad and spending time with subcultures like bronies and furries if he was working today. A question that may be raised about new journalism is, who can tell whose stories? Wolfe didn't try to speak for anyone. He used his skills as a writer to help people tell their stories better than they may be able to express it without the aid of someone who can lend their understanding of storytelling techniques to their perspective. There's trust involved. I wouldn't tell anyone's stories through the lens of new journalism unless they wanted to or consented to working with me. Wolfe's stories are still fun and interesting to read today because he told his stories through an individual lens, seeing into people's souls. He was able to capture a specific moment in time and something that is also beyond time. Because he got their stories right, they hold up, they live. In Tom Wolfe's story, The First Tycoon of Teen, he profiles Phil Spector, a wonderkind producer who, and I'm quoting, was the first millionaire businessman to rise up out of the teenage netherworld. Spector in the profile said, "I get a little angry when people say it's bad music. It has limited chord changes and people are always saying the words are banal and why doesn't anybody write lyrics like Cole Porter anymore? But we don't have presidents like Lincoln anymore either." He probably would be big on Instagram today. Spector's words and the reaction to his music makes me think of pop music today and mumble rap. Who is saying it's bad music today? While, yes, traditional critics pan this music, it's often commentary channels, which, in a way, are splinters of high culture. But they're more relatable. They're people sitting in their rooms, often youthful, with or without traditional qualifications. This is another shift in culture. Institutions that typically are the arbiters of value, like the Oscars, are taken less seriously today, and that's largely because we see the bias in their decisions. Commentary channels reflect the public. If we can relate to the commentary, we are more likely to accept the recommendations. I'm sorry, my dog is snoring, but I can't wake him up. Tom Wolfe didn't exist in any specific institution, even if he came from a traditional background. He wasn't gossip nor commentary. Wolfe, for the most part, didn't project his opinion. He aimed to get inside of the subject or culture's perspective and adapt to their language and style. He wrote about Baby Jane Holzer, 1964's Girl of the Year, who was an actress, model, and Warhol superstar. Wolfe used Holzer's language in the story. For example, "Those motherless stripes, oh damn, here she is with her friends, looking like some kind of queen bee for all flaming little buds everywhere."
So lit!
Another literary journalist was Joan Didion. Her 1967 collection, Slouching Towards Bethlehem, took a look at counterculture youth as well. The titular essay starts out like this. "The center was not holding. It was a country of bankruptcy notices and public auction announcements and commonplace reports of casual killings and misplaced children in abandoned homes and vandals who misspelled even the four-letter words they scrawled. It was a country in which families routinely disappeared, trailing bad checks and repossession papers. Adolescents drifted from city to torn city, sloughing off both the past and the future as snakes shed their skins, children who were never taught and would never now learn the games that held the society together. And in the same essay, Dawn and Max want to go out to dinner, but Dawn is on a macrobiotic diet, so we end up in Japantown. Max is telling me how he lives free of all the old middle-class Freudian hang-ups. History is cyclical, even if it's not the same. Gay Talese is another literary journalist. One of his most famous essays is The Silent Season of the Hero, about the baseball great Joe DiMaggio. In this essay, we get an intimate look at DiMaggio, his retirement, his childhood, his grieving for his ex-wife Marilyn Monroe. We used to write of kings and queens, then celebrities. Today, it's people who go viral. Would we ever get such an honest look at a celebrity like Ariana Grande? There are still profiles written about celebrities, and maybe I'm being cynical here, but I don't think we get truly intimate looks anymore, partially because it's not our business. Because even though we see their homes and lives presented to us as honest on social media, it's all calculated. Most stories contribute to a carefully crafted image, and because even if they did let us in, the internet would likely tear them apart. Some of these stories allow us to remember people and movements that might have been lost to history, and a look at legends in a new and intimate perspective. These 20th century stories makes me wonder which stories will be told and how they will be told. Influencers and YouTubers like Shane Dawson, Charlie D'Amelio, Nikita Dragon, Jake Paul, Jeffree Star. I personally would love to see the story of someone like ContraPoints. All of them would have caught a literary journalist's eye, just like Baby Jane Holzer did. I'm not making any direct comparisons between them. There may be some similarities, but we just simply don't live in the same age. So, no. Which personalities will go on to be bigger than we could have imagined, and intimate, carefully crafted stories of their lives in their early days will be as interesting and rare as wolf stories about Frank Sinatra. That story is called Frank Sinatra Has a Cold, if you're interested. Some stars we've almost forgotten they got their start on YouTube, like Justin Bieber or Bo Burnham, because they've evolved. Who will be largely forgotten except by their fans or people who rolled their eyes at the influencers' antics as they watched tea spill. Internet stars come and go. Warhol was being prophetic when he said that in the future, everyone will be famous for 15 minutes. All we have of Lil Tay are her old, outrageous videos, and that's for the good of the young girl. But we could have also had her story told in a more accurate way. I'd like to note here that I'm not commenting on the morality of any of these people or how deserving they are of having their stories carefully told. There are, of course, many differences between telling the story of Lil Tay and a subject of Tom Wolfe. Everything exists on the internet indefinitely as far as we know. We have access if we want to look. All of these stories in the past were in print and far less in quantity, so it's not easy to take the time to look at all of the stories on the internet, and we shouldn't take everything seriously. We already do, and it's contributed to cancel culture. And again, we don't have the right to anyone's lives. But if their stories are already being told, maybe there should be a balance between drama, commentary, their own videos, and new journalism. Drama channels, commentary, they're all a part of storytelling, even if the stories are often harmful, sometimes insightful. But I think some stories should be preserved through a narrative lens, even if they don't seem important. The new journalism we have from the 1960s is an entrance into the culture we don't see in mass media or history books. Every viral event, every overnight influencer, each group, the way we relate to each other in digital spaces, all of this is a part of the time that is ours for now and will never be remembered accurately, not by us and especially not by culture. Some things should just be for passing enjoyment, or to satisfy the need for gossip that seems to be innate in humans. My dream is to be a new journalist and write about the figures of today, of right now, before they are gone tomorrow. for the future. Also, to bring a balance to the way stories are told. They're often damaging. A balance in storytelling is needed because these calculated stories are messing with our mindsets. Even if we're able to take a step back and understand lifestyles portrayed on the internet are largely constructed, it's difficult to remember it in the moment of watching these lives or looking at perfect pictures. And on the flip side of that, the drama, the cyberbullying, the way the stories are told of these personalities are sometimes unfair, reactionary, steeped in, or an offshoot of cancel culture. This subject may be another video though. Dr. Rick said in a conversation on this topic that seeing is the medicine prescribed in every tradition. We want to be healing with our storytelling for the subject and the reader. This is all to say, don't disregard anything, even if you don't pay attention to it. Think about what lens the story is being told through. Enjoy what you want, and be the kind of free and therefore interesting weirdo Tom Wolfe would have seen as literary gold. We're starting to work on a series now comparing internet figures to common archetypes and working on more content looking at internet culture through the lens of book sense. We would really appreciate if you'd like and subscribe and make suggestions in the comments below. Thank you, and until next time.